Well, I'm genuinely sorry to that single person who said they're not interested, but the six people who said they'd be interested in a review of the video games I played last year have birthed a video reviewing the video games I played in 2025. Just delayed because of the hype and marketing video, which I have to say I had a blast making. You probably already gathered this, considering, the Rakan minisode and the Witchwood episode, but I do indeed like video games. I've always been interested in the concept of video games, but my house never had a console or anything, so the only exposure I ever got to games was at friends' places. I also got hit by the whole girls don't play video games stereotype, which was even more rampant in the early 2000s when I was at school, so I thought I was relegated to never playing them. I, however, was a big YouTube watcher and was obsessed with dragons, so watching dragon videos, I one day stumbled upon the Overwatch short Dragons, just after it had released, and me being interested in Japan, ninjas, fantasy, dragons, well, of course I loved it and wanted to know more about it. Hence, I spent a year watching Overwatch shorts. Shorts as in the cinematics, not the YouTube shorts, holy moly. Lore videos, gameplay, and more, and saved up money to buy the game myself before I finally convinced my dad to let me download it onto his laptop. After the power of the game blew up said laptop several times, I thankfully got my own gaming desktop and have since upgraded it, downloaded Steam, and so on. Once my friends migrated to League from Overwatch, I did too, and started playing other games. I realised partway through 2024 that, well, if I was willing to spend so much money on buying new books, why wasn't I willing to spend money on video games, which I enjoy playing almost as much as I enjoy reading? Well, I'm sure a simple glance at the runtime of this video or the chapters will tell you how that went. Whoops. And thus, well, I played a lot more video games last year than I have in every other year of my life, and that, combined with my concert review and, well, I guess now a book review with my reading journal, made me think that I should perhaps take a moment to look back at the video games I played this year, since I really wanted to talk about many of them, but not to the extent of a full episode or minisode each. Coincidentally, I also upgraded my desktop this year, but that was because the computer broke, not because I wanted a better computer to game with. Regardless, it's good that I got a lot more use out of the computer in 2025, both in terms of video games and in terms of the number of videos I uploaded. In this video, similarly to in my concert review, I'll go through each of the video games I played and completed last year from January to December. I'll give a general trigger warning and spoiler warning for this video. Each game I discuss will have different triggers that I'll put in the timestamps, similarly to how I did for the K-pop PR video. I'll also give an advance spoiler warning now. I'll try and keep each review spoiler free, but there's a small possibility of minor spoilers depending on the game. If I want to give a more in-depth review with spoilers of any of these games, I'll let you know that spoilers are coming in advance. Also, prices are in AUD, but I bought most of the games in this video on sale anyway, so I wasn't paying full price. So with that, let's get into it, starting with the first game of the year. Wow, what a shocker. This is kind of an honorary section. I didn't finish playing League in January. In fact, the game can't even be completed, and even if it could, I certainly haven't finished it. But I did want to include it because it was probably the first game I played this year, the last game I played this year, and it was the game I played the most of this year, as usual. In notable League achievements this year, I obtained 3 more Rakan skins, several Rakan and Xayah related emotes and icons, and I think I only played about 20 games in the whole year that weren't Rakan games. Whoops. Since my Rakan minisode, there have indeed been changes to the game, and I've pretty consistently been building Lucidity Boots, Malignance, Crypt Bloom, and Shadow Flame. Is this the ideal combo? Definitely not. But I enjoy it, and I appreciate that it keeps my damage decent while increasing the damage of any AP teammates and having some healing utility. I'll just put in a disclaimer now, but I wrote in my script this year a lot because I wrote this at the end of last year, so if I say this year, I mean 2025, sorry. Anyway, probably my biggest or saddest, depending on your opinion, achievement of last year was reaching 1 million mastery points on Rakan, which I did in early December. So, congrats to me, I guess. As usual, I enjoy playing Rakan more than I actually enjoy playing League. Video games which give you lots of mobility options are always fun, and Rakan gives lots of mobility options combined with lots of utility and lots of skill expressiveness. So yeah. But I guess if you wanted to hear more about that, well, I do have an entire 50-minute minisode about it. In 2026, the new role quest for mid lane has made Rakan mid borderline unplayable, and my win rate has sadly reflected that. I've found so far that Electrocute has felt a lot better than Dark Harvest this season, and the new item Bandle Pipes is good for Rakan support, which is relevant considering the new season has done something to the Oceanian low elo league community, which has resulted in mid being super popular and me primarily being auto-filled support for like 70% of games, even when mid is literally listed as a priority role. But I'll talk more about that later at the start of next year. Okay, that's that. League is always League regardless of how much it changes. I won't rank or rate it since it's kind of everlasting, and my experience is very mixed game to game anyway. But I'll give Rakan the Champion a 9 out of 10. On to some actual games that I actually played in full and completed this year. The first game I played this year was actually a cute little shop game called Minami Lane. There's no spoiler warning for this section because there's no real story in this game. But what story there is that you've moved into a new neighbourhood which has been declining for several years. Your job as a business owner slash neighbourhood planner is to revive it by appealing to both the elder population of the neighbourhood and by bringing in more people, and especially youths. You have to open ramen shops, convenience stores, karaoke booths, and more, and adjust their products and prices to find the ideal combinations. You also get to, or more like have to at points, decorate your street in different ways because, of course, all the incoming residents want to live in a nice looking street, and they'll be sad if the street looks gross. The game is $7.50 on Steam. It's pretty commonly on sale and at time of writing was 30% off. The game took me 3.5 hours to complete, so it's pretty short, but it's also pretty cheap. It only has 5 levels with 10 objectives if you count optional objectives, and it has a sandbox mode. I think I'd give this game a 7 out of 10. It's pretty good, but more importantly, it's 1, cheap, and 2, very clearly advertises what it is and isn't on the Steam store page. It was enjoyable for what it was, but nothing extraordinary. Alright, on to the next game. Next is After Us, which I finished on the 2nd of March. The game is $45 on Steam and took me almost 26 hours to play to full completion. There aren't any super challenging achievements, they're mostly just collectibles, so it's not like Ori and the Blind Forest or something where you'll break your mind trying to gain 100% achievements. Full warning in advance that this game can only be played with a controller, so thank goodness my sibling had one because I missed this warning and then I was like, ugh, I don't own one. This game is a very strong and explicit pro-climate action game, and also is a pro-animal rights game. It depicts a post-human world where pollution and climate disasters have basically taken over everything, and the only people left are frozen in time or mindless drones, often literally glued to their TVs. You play as Gaia, who's kind of an ambiguous spirit slash offspring of the mother tree, which holds the souls of all of the animals in the world. Once the souls disappear, presumably because of human action, you have to journey out into the world and bring life back to it while finding and freeing the souls of the animals. I think the game has a generally intuitive and engaging movement system, even for someone like me who's unfamiliar with controllers. Gaia is very dynamic and has a wide range of powers you can use to traverse the world. The main issue I faced was that I'd, like I said, literally never played with a controller before, so I struggled a little bit. The world is also massive and beautifully created. It's not quite open world, but it's pretty close, and there's tons of nooks and crannies with collectibles. It has a lot of puzzles, but most are relatively easy, and is more about the atmosphere and message than making your life difficult. You journey through 8 different environments affected by humans while you find 8 main animal spirits. For instance, you'll find the deer in the forest and the dog in the suburbs. I think the main appeal of the game is the idea of exploring this surreal post-human world where human machines continue on, and bringing life back to it. Gaia is tiny, which adds to the sense of surrealism, the wonder, and the danger of the world. You learn a lot about what happened to the world and the people in it as the game goes on, and this progression in the game has both a somber and hopeful tone as you learn about the highs and lows of human nature. I really enjoyed this game and recommend it. It's a good length for me, long enough to get stuck into for a few days, but short enough that you don't get halfway through, get stuck, and then drop it because you're making so little progress. If you like games that are less challenging and more atmospheric and story-based, this is good. And it's especially good if you like exploring and collectibles. While playing this game, I repeatedly thought to myself that this game, 1, shows how good video games can be and how video games can be really powerful, immersive experiences which send a message, and 2, that everyone should be forced to play this game. I think the messages it sends are so important that it should basically be mandatory viewing. Maybe we should make this a unit to study in high school English or something. The game doesn't shy away from showing the incredibly destructive nature of an ever-expanding capitalist system on both animals and humans alike, and shows how pervasive humanity has become and how much worse things could become if we don't take action. There's mountains of rubbish where houses should be. There's rubbish at the bottom of the deepest parts of the ocean, and even humans have been wiped out by our own creations. As I wrote in the trigger warnings of this section, there are incredibly graphic depictions of the ways in which animals and environments are treated by humans in the modern world. The meat industry, hunting and culling animals, whaling, and so on. I don't want to go into detail because I think this is technically a spoiler, but the game really makes you feel the fear and pain of these animals and doesn't give you the opportunity to avoid this. So yeah, if you don't think these things appeal to you or you don't think you can handle them, don't play the game. But if you're interested, I'd definitely recommend the game. It does include a hopeful message too, that we can prevent this outcome if we take collective action, so it's not just straight up depressing. I think this game deserves a 10 out of 10. It's not perfect, but I think it's a great example of the art of video games, and although it didn't change my life, I do think it has the capacity to change lives and to provide people with new perspectives. I really wanted to keep playing it after I finished. Unfortunately, it doesn't really have any replayability value if you've already explored everything like I had. So anyway, congrats to After Us. Next is Gorogoa, which I also finished on March 2nd. After I finished After Us, I really wanted to play something else, so I played this. This is a short and mind-bending puzzle game. It usually takes players about an hour to complete, but took me almost 2 hours, because this was clearly a type of puzzle game I was not good at, and I kept getting stuck and having to look things up. It costs $22.50 on Steam, so is a bit pricey for such a short game. That's probably because it's all hand-drawn and very complex though. The game involves manipulating items within 4 panels on your screen to solve problems and find different items while taking the main character through the story. I don't have much to say about the game. You can find short videos of some of the crazier puzzles everywhere on like Instagram or YouTube Reels or something, which I think gives a pretty good idea of how the game plays without giving you spoilers. Basically, it's very abstract and mind-bending with the layers and layers of puzzles and stories. So if you'd like that kind of thing, go for it. Looking at reviews of the game, it seems like some people find it mega easy and think it isn't worth the price point at all, while others, like me, find it to be unreasonably difficult and mind-blowing. Even though I really struggled with the game and found it unintuitive, I'd still really recommend it if you like the things that I mentioned before: abstract, mind-bending, layered puzzles. I'll give the game 6 out of 10 purely because I didn't have the best personal experience with it, but I still have massive respect for the developers to be able to make such a beautiful game and to design such unique and interesting puzzles. It really deserved to win the Game Awards that it's won. I believe you can also buy it on mobile if that suits you. The next game I played was Death's Door. It's 29.50 on Steam and took just over 24 hours to complete almost all of the achievements. It's an isometric self-described Souls-like game in which you are a Grim Reaper Crow who works at a soul office and, well, collects/reaps souls. When the soul you are on assignment to collect is stolen from you, you have to leave the bounds of your assigned area to get it back, and you run into lots and lots of corporate corruption on the way. The game takes you through a series of puzzles and boss battles as you learn more about the corrupt nature of your boss and the world, and it includes several rounds, I guess, of achievements. There's lots of optional boss battles and collectibles, basically. The game is definitely on the humorous side of dealing with death and is just one more piece of media in a long string over the past 100 years or so to depict how capitalism takes over even death itself. The game definitely deals with the theme of corruption, as I mentioned earlier, but also with the importance of accepting death rather than running away from it. It has lots of great moments and dialogue, and I think it's very fun. The movement system also felt very smooth and polished, especially in comparison to Jotun, which was another isometric Souls-like game I played around the time of Death's Door that I'll discuss later. After I played this game, I went back to Jotun, and it felt so clunky and slow in comparison, it was terrible. I think this game had a lot of well written and fun characters and a very interesting world. There's tons of hidden secrets, and of course, you are a crow, so you can collect shiny things. And there's a nice mystery aspect to the game as you learn more about how the Grim Reaper agency kind of fell to capitalism. That said, some of the puzzles in the game were so weird and unintuitive that I had to look them up, and there's some where I was like, this could only ever be solved through either one, Googling it, or two, like, literal hours worth of trial and error. Like, there's no clues anywhere that tell you how to do it, you just have to, like, work it out from nothing. The actual health/save system is also kind of annoying. You can only heal by picking up these life seeds in the world, which you can then plant in pots and consume to heal you to full health. This consumes the flower, which will grow back, but only after you reach the next save point, which also respawns all enemies in an area if you killed them. Furthermore, the only save points are doors, which appear at fixed positions throughout the map. There aren't tons of them, and if you're unlucky, sometimes you need to trek a decent distance back to a boss fight, instead of just being able to respawn at the start of it and get right back into it. This is something I hated about Hollow Knight 2. This, combined with a very limited health bar, no way to lifesteal or heal in combat, and some boss hitboxes which sometimes felt unfair, meant that the combat of the game can be frustrating, and I've definitely seen more than one Twitch streamer rage at the game. The game description on Steam also has some false advertising I think should be mentioned. On one hand, it says that the tale is darkly comedic, which is definitely true, and also describes the storyline as uncovering the truth of the world in a way which I think is accurate to the game experience. But it also says that you can customize and master your stats and abilities, which makes the main crow character sound far more customizable than they actually are. The only actual customization and mastery as far as stats go is which weapon you use. So you can basically choose between a sword, a jack of all trades, daggers which are fast but have less range and damage, a great sword which is slow but powerful, and basically Thor's hammer which does electric AoE damage. You can also choose to use the umbrella, which does a bit less than half damage compared to the sword, but also gives you an achievement for completing the game with it alone. It's not even that bad of an option. Yeah, like that's literally it. I just played the whole game with the base sword because it's not like there's any late game scaling that would make the hammer more ideal or something, and I was already used to the sword, which is nicely balanced. The other thing the game claims you can customize is your upgrades and abilities, which, like, I guess you can, but not in the typical sense. When I read this paragraph on the game page, I imagined something like, although not as extensive as, Warframe, where you can add different damage types to your weapons or buy different upgrades, or make careful decisions on whether you'll gain, for instance, a chain lightning ability or a shield ability or something else. The reality of the game is there's 4 stats you can upgrade a few times with the souls you've reaped, you can collect gems to upgrade your mana and health, and there's 4 special abilities, a bow, a fire spell, an explosion spell, and a grapple hook, the latter 3 of which can be upgraded via hidden boss battles. But like, you don't have to choose between these things. If you farm enough enemies, you can upgrade all of your stats and abilities fully, which is what most people will end up doing most of the time, which means that you're all just exactly the same and there's no actual customization. It's not even like you'd want to upgrade one stat before the others because the differences in upgraded stats is kind of hard to feel, unless you upgrade damage fully and start two-shotting enemies instead of three-shotting them. You also can't choose to gain, say, only the fire spell. All four of the spells are mandatory for the plot progression and accessing new areas. That's it for customization. A bit misleading in my opinion. Anyway, despite all of that, overall I would definitely recommend the game. It's super fun and engaging and interesting, and I think is an at least partially unique take on the corporatized death idea. It has tons of interesting hidden details and puzzles, and lots of Easter eggs if you like those. I also personally like the game's sense of humour, although obviously that may be different for you. In the end, I think I'll give it an 8 out of 10. Enjoyable, but with room for improvement. Massive points for being a crow game where you can collect shiny things. This will be a pretty short one. Gathering Sky is a relaxing game about flying a flock of birds over various environments and collecting birds and light as you go. The game is $7.50 on Steam, which I personally think is a bit expensive considering it only lasts for about an hour and very little of substance happens. There is a suggestion of a storyline which makes itself clear at the end, hence I won't spoil it, but for the most part it's basically just a flying simulator for 99% of the game, and not even a massively interesting one at that, and there's no achievements or other things to do. It's a very nice and relaxing atmospheric experience if you like those, but I wouldn't recommend it if you're looking for actual games to play. It's more like if you wished you could interact a bit with your screensaver. I'll give it a 6 out of 10. Like I said, it's nice and atmospheric and very zen, but I'm not really interested in this kind of abstract art thing you could pick apart and look at for hours and have layers for if you wanted to, so I don't think it's for me. It's the kind of game I'd expect to see in, and this is going to be awfully specific, an abstract exhibit on video games at the ACMI, the Australian Centre for the Moving Image in Melbourne. In fact, I may well have seen it featured there. I saw both Hollow Knight and Flower featured in a video game exhibit there previously. By the way, 10 out of 10 recommend the ACMI if you go to Melbourne ever and like film, video games, or other moving images and their history. It's a brilliant museum and I'm deeply jealous we don't have it in Sydney. They have tons of cool exhibits. The next game I played is Hoa, which I finished on the 21st of May. It's a short game, it only took me about 7 hours to complete, and is $21.50 on Steam. It's a relaxing and generally easy low-stakes platformer set in a magical fairy world, although it does get harder and darker towards the end. Unfortunately, I do have to agree with many of the negative reviews that the game is pretty forgettable and has some issues with controls feeling clunky and weird. That said, the environments are lovely, the puzzles are generally easy to solve, and there's no combat, which are all positive points if you like those things. It's a very calm experience for 99% of the game, and has nice themes of environmentalism, family, and sacrifice. I would also say it arguably shows the inherent goodness of humanity. A lot of people describe this game as nostalgic, which I can definitely see. If you were a fan of the Barbie movies, especially the Barbie fairy movies of the early 2000s, this game will probably appeal to you. And as I've said several times already, if you want a simple and chill platformer set in nature, this is the one. It's also clearly inspired by the Iron Giant, so if you liked that story, you may well like this one. I think I'll give this game a 7 out of 10. It was good but forgettable. I remember having a lot of fun playing it, but I don't really remember the game itself, and it's not a game that I find myself wishing I could play again for the first time, as I do with After Us and Death's Door. The next game is Bokura, which is a co-op game. I don't tend to play co-op games because I don't really have anyone to play them with, but I played this over 2 sessions as part of some video game dates I did. My date and I finished this in about 4.5 hours, after which I promptly got ghosted and have no clue why, which kind of sours the experience of the game. Rip me. Anyway, the unfortunate aspect of this game is that there's no friend pass. Both people have to pay for and own the full version of the game. On the bright side, the game is only $8.12 on Steam and is frequently on sale. At time of writing, it was 70% off and only cost $2.50, so it's not like it's a horribly expensive game. Ahem, split fiction, ahem. Don't worry, split fiction looks like it deserves to be that expensive. Anyway, the main appeal of Bokura is that the two players experience two different worlds. The main characters are two children who are friends, and which child you choose to play as dictates the world you live in. The blue-clothed child lives in a world of robots and technology, gaining fun powers like the ability to dismantle objects and creatures, while the green-clothed child lives in a cute fairy tale land with magic, and some shocking moments. The two children get thrust into these worlds and have to navigate through the world while attempting to solve conflict with NPCs and with each other and their own traumas. The game has some fun mystery elements, and some of those elements are left ambiguous at the end of the story. It deals with themes of friendship, family, the passage of time, adolescence and growing into adulthood, and trauma and mental health. The game is very nicely designed. I think both worlds are interesting and generally pretty. Of course, as a co-op puzzle game, the main draw of this game is the puzzles, which I really enjoyed. There's tons of interesting and unique puzzles which you can only get through by verbally communicating to the other player about what you see. I don't know if I was just easily impressed because I've never really played a co-op game before, certainly not one with two worlds, but I thought the puzzles were unique and engaging. They were challenging but not too challenging and encouraged communication, which I enjoyed. Overall, I'd definitely recommend this game. I think it's great value for the money, especially since you can replay it again and again with different friends/dates. I obviously wouldn't recommend the getting ghosted part of the experience though. There's also some DLC, but I can't tell you whether it's good or bad because, well, my date and I never got around to playing it, did we? Anyway, I'll give it an 8 out of 10. Fun game, but I wish it was a bit longer and had a more concrete ending. Mind you, my date and I did speed through it a little bit, so we may have missed a few things. The next game I played was Haven, which I finished on the 10th of September. The game costs $36.50 on Steam and took me 16.5 hours. In that run, I completed some side content, such as beating every island/level, but not all of the side content. For instance, I didn't get the achievement for trying every possible dish in the game. This game is an exploration adventure game with optional local co-op, although I played it single player as usual. It self-describes as a game that isn't hard, which is true. Most of the combat is pretty easy and the game is more focused on the relationship between the two main characters. The whole premise of this game is that you play as two lovers who fled their home planet when they couldn't be together, and are developing their relationship and exploring the new world they're on while running away from the law enforcement of their own planet. So, if you're a fan of forbidden romance, especially romance between nobility and commoners in any kind of feudal system, and you like wump and characters looking after each other's wounds, ha! Do I have a game for you! Literally the entire game is based around the relationship between the characters. The plot, the gameplay, the dialogue, and the leveling system in which you level and grow stronger, i.e. gain better stats, by doing things together and learning more about each other. You explore a series of islands and clear an infection of rust from the native animal inhabitants while learning more about each other, this new planet, and the planet you left. I thought this was a very enjoyable game. Although it does have some sexual content, which I'm too ace for, most of it is pretty tame and mostly just romantic. The movement system can take a bit of getting used to, but afterwards feels smooth and interesting, and I thought the characters and their relationship were engaging. They have ups and downs in their relationship, like everyone does, and lots of the mundane elements of their daily life add realism to the story. Another massive appeal of this game, I think, is the fact that you can choose which set of characters you play as. You always play as K and U, but you can choose to play as base heterosexual K and U, or you can play as gay or lesbian K and U. So, you know I played the lesbian couple. Unfortunately, there's no non-binary K and U, and I've heard tell that some of the dialogue options accidentally misgender the homosexual couples because of technical oversights. But like, this was a great addition to the game, and I think a lot of fans really appreciated that the devs went to the effort to add this, while also including full voiceovers of the gender-bent characters. Very fun. The gameplay can get, I think, a bit repetitive, but the story is the main thing you're there for, so choose your battles, I guess. I mean, it is supposed to be a relatively chill and romantic action adventure, not a super stressful one. I'd definitely recommend this game if you like the sound of what I've said, and I'll give it an 8 out of 10 because I wish there were a few more collectibles and a few more late game upgrades, but I still found it enjoyable. The next game I played is Venba, which is a short story game about an Indian family who migrate to Canada in the 1980s, where you, the mother, try to pass on your cultural love of cooking to your son via food. And I would not recommend this game at all, because playing it made me crave South Indian food. I was seriously dying while playing this game because I played it late at night when I couldn't just run out to buy food to cook, and when all of the restaurants in the area that serve South Indian food were closed. It was seriously so painful. I picked it up being like, oh, I like South Indian food, let's go, but I clearly made a big mistake. Anyway, the game is $22.45 on Steam and took me about an hour and a half to finish, so perhaps whether you get it or not should be more based on whether you think this is an appropriate price point. I won't go into too much detail because it's a relatively short game, so you get into spoilers pretty quickly, but the game takes place over several decades as you, Venba, and your family try to settle in as recent migrants to Canada. The game is made up of several interactive visual novel segments combined with cooking segments where you learn and follow South Indian recipes for different occasions. The game follows the family through sickness and health and has a heavy emphasis on language and culture in migrant families, and how these families experience stigma and racism. I thought the story of the family was poignant and important to tell, and reflects both the ups and downs of moving country in hopes of creating a better life for your children. The game also has a banger soundtrack, which made me really want to listen to more Indian music. It's upbeat, energizing, and relaxing at the same time, and makes the process of cooking the food feel really exciting. I think it also gives nice insight into Venba's habits and connection to her home country. This great sound design also extends to the sound effects, which are mouth-wateringly good in the cooking sections. Anyway, outside of the fact that you shouldn't play this game unless you have some South Indian food to chow down on while doing so, I really recommend this game, especially if you're interested in interactive graphic novels and in learning more about different cultures and aren't South Indian. I mean, I put that in because, like, presumably if you're South Indian, you already know a lot of this, but I guess some people are disconnected from their culture. So, as long as you want to learn more about South Indian culture and food, go for it. The literal only downsides to the game are 1, it makes me really hungry, 2, it's too short, and 3, it's on the expensive side for its length. But like, it's a wonderfully created and heartfelt product, so I'll happily support an indie game. I'll give it a 9 out of 10. The next game I played was From Eva with Green, which I finished on the 22nd of September, and which took about an hour to play. To match this playtime, it's $4.50 on Steam. The game is the game for you if you like pinball and also plants. It's literally just a series of pinball machines where you power up the pinball to grow plants. The pinball levels are in different environments, and I guess the game kind of has the implication of a story. My understanding, spoilers I guess, was that Eva has died and her spirit is visiting the people who were important to her in her life. But I also sped through this game and didn't give it anywhere near as much consideration as one could give it, so I may have missed something. If you want a relaxing and aesthetic experience, and like I said, like pinball and plants, this is the game for you. I'll give it a 6 out of 10 because, as with Gathering Sky, it just doesn't have a lot going on. It's nice if it's the kind of specific game that you're looking for, but for both of these games, I was hoping for more story and less abstraction. I guess if you're an art student who's more into abstract interactive media, this would be a good one to try. It's another one that I'd expect to see at the ACMI. The next game I played is Carto, which I finished on the 22nd of September. The game took me 10 hours to complete and has a free demo on Steam, but if you choose to buy the full game, it's $29. This is another story-based puzzle game, and this one, as its name suggests, has a unique gimmick. You solve puzzles by literally moving and rotating pieces of the map. For instance, at the start of the game, you get lost and come across a girl who says that she knows someone who can help you, who lives at the lake next to the forest. On the map, there is no lake next to the forest, so you just move map pieces to create one, and lo and behold, a house pops out of nowhere. I can't imagine how insane the coding of this game must be. Anyway, the whole point of the story of this game is that you, Carto, are a young girl who travels with her grandmother in a blimp. Their family have been creating and manipulating maps for generations, when they get caught in a storm and separated, so Carto has to find her way back to her grandmother using nothing but her map skills. Over the course of the game, you journey across various environments, including through forests, deserts, icy plains, and a volcano resort, and learn about the unique cultures of the people who live in those places. You make friends and help people out, and solve lots and lots of interesting map problems. I really enjoyed the unique gameplay of this game and enjoyed learning about the different cultures of the people who lived in the different environments. The game has a heavy emphasis on family and how the different cultures relate to the concept of family, which is interesting. The only issue I have with this game is that some of the solutions to problems aren't very intuitive. It's not a difficult game, but some of them are a bit strange. That said, it's probably mostly a coding issue. For the sake of the game functioning properly, sometimes you need to do very specific things to solve a problem, which means that you could do the correct thing, but like at the wrong orientation, for instance. On a different note, some of the problems have hilariously obvious solutions, like so obvious that you miss them even though they're right under your nose. It tends to be very literal. Anyway, it was a fun and relatively short game. I'd definitely recommend it 8 out of 10 because I didn't feel engaged enough to give it a higher rating. The next game I played is another story-based medium difficulty puzzle game. Do you think I have a kind of game I like? The Rewinder is a puzzle game set in a fantastical ancient Chinese-inspired world, where you play as a man called Yun, who is the last Rewinder. Rewinders being people who work with the Guardians of the Underworld to change the fate of restless spirits by entering their memory time streams and influencing decisions to alter the past. The game took me about 7.5 hours to finish and costs $21.50 on Steam. It has a free demo and purchasable DLC, and it actually has a lot more content than the 7.5 hours I played would suggest. I only played the main story and didn't finish any extra stories or the post-game content. The game involves a mystery where on your current assignment you find an abandoned village and have to investigate how and why this happened. The game includes layers of time travel and lots of kooky timeline changing shenanigans. I do think it's pretty lenient on your mistakes in the timeline changing levels, but that's probably only because you literally need to succeed for the sake of the plot. The game also includes tons of fun references to Chinese mythology and is one of those games that takes copious notes for you in an in-game journal. So if you're someone who enjoys exploring every nook and cranny of the world and reading everything ever written in the in-game journals, you'll like this one. Beyond the supernatural going-ons in the overworld, you'll also get to visit the underworld, where you can visit the ghost market, which includes tons of fun stalls like gambling, alcohol, sugar art, and advertising, because even the underworld has become capitalistic again. You can also collect various plants for your buddy the tree spirit to keep in his garden, which is nice. They're optional collectibles, by the way. The game has lots of points of interest which aren't actually plot relevant but do give you fun tidbits about Chinese culture, so exploring everything really pays off if you want to learn more about that. Being a game about death, and moreover one with a more somber and serious tone than Death's Door, does mean that the game deals with some heavier topics, including death, suicide, and suicidal ideation, extreme violence and gore, cult leaders, and so on. But I think overall it told an interesting story about power, friendship, and justice. It also has some nice and funny character moments. It treads the line between the underground workers being underpaid and overworked and depressed in a capitalist system, and being genuinely passionate about wanting to help the souls of the dead and going above and beyond for their friends and others. And I think it toes that line pretty well. I think the main draws of this game are the Chinese cultural elements, the puzzle solving, and the mystery element. It's not quite a murder mystery, but it's similar. Anyway, I'd definitely recommend this game if you like the sound of it, and I'll give it an 8 out of 10. Some of the puzzles were a bit odd and unintuitive, but the rest of the game was great. Oh my goodness, 2 games in a row with cults? And moreover, another story-based puzzle game? I'll stop going on about that. Anyway, the Last Campfire took me 10 hours to complete with all achievements. Similarly to in After Us, it's pretty easy to get all of the achievements just by following the story of the game. The game costs $22 on Steam and also has a free demo. This is another game which deals with mental health and, to an extent, death and accepting the inevitability of death, but it has a much more hopeful tone than both The Rewinder and Death's Door. Also, in a quick slay, all of the characters are non-binary. The game is about an ember, presumably some kind of fire spirit, who gets separated from their family/clan, while said family/clan is trying to find the last campfire, which is a place of safety, I guess. Ember then has to go on a journey through an unknown and dangerous land to find their way back to their family. The start of the game is literally Ratatouille style getting separated in underground water tunnels. It's hilarious. Anyway, the main portion of the game is that as Ember journeys through this land, they come across these campfires guarded by ghosts. At each of these campfires, the player can choose to do a series of optional puzzle levels. I'm not sure how many of these are mandatory to proceed. It may only be 1 per campfire, but I finished all of them. For each of these levels, you have to go and find a forlorn, an ember who got lost in the land and lost all hope, basically falling into a comatose, depressive, and borderline suicidal state, in which they lose all colour and almost become statues. Ember, who is a very hopeful little ember, can choose to share their light with each forlorn. At this point, you can complete a puzzle level which relates to each forlorn's specific mental struggle. As you complete the levels, Ember learns about the struggles of each forlorn and helps them out of it, basically becoming a therapist for each one. Once you solve each puzzle, the forlorn will thank you and can be found at the campfire, where they will be protected from becoming forlorn again. So technically all forlorn beyond the required ones are collectibles, but 1, you get an achievement for collecting them all, 2, it only seems right to help them all, and 3, you're playing a puzzle game, why would you not finish the puzzles? So it makes sense to collect them all. There are 2 other collectible kinds of things in the game. The first are stone crates you can find throughout the world, which include scraps of the Journal of a Wanderer, which give some slight lore hints. The second are items you can pick up throughout the world, most of which are used for puzzles and quests, for instance, keys. Beyond the forlorn, there are members of other species who have become hopeless that you can help. Basically, despite the many trigger warnings for this section which may concern you, the game is about altruism and hope. The game also includes a mystery or arguably even horror element. Minor spoilers ahead. You've been warned. I'm spoiling you now. I'll put a timestamp on the screen for the end of the minor spoilers. After the first campfire, you come across a huge door and 2 birds guarding it. Staring at the birds reveals they're just puppets, being piloted by embers inside. They lead you to the Forest King, a huge bird who basically tells you to assimilate and join the birds, or else. The Forest King is clearly some representation of some crazy 1984-esque cult leader, and they threaten embers who pass through into assimilating or getting lost. They also pass on lots of propaganda through their bird minions about how the wilderness is a dangerous place and you shouldn't go out there, little Ember, because you're guaranteed to turn forlorn. It's all hopeless and we're doomed, so your only real option is to join us and become a bird instead. It's pretty clear that the birds are literally just brainwashed embers inside costumes. They've started brainwashing and converting the other embers who take refuge near the Forest King's throne, and they lock off and guard all of the ways to the outside world, basically imprisoning all of the embers in the area, even if an ember did indeed want to go outside and risk becoming forlorn. Anyway, the reason I brought this all up is to say that the mystery surrounding the Forest King is an interesting part of the game. So yeah, a good game to play if you're interested in trying different puzzles and exploring a game with themes of altruism, hope, and mental health. Also a very cute and nostalgic environmental design if you like forest spirits. I thought the ending was also very good. I don't really think the game has any notable flaws, and similarly to After Us, although I don't think it was life-changing for me, it could well be life-changing for others. So I'll give it a 10 out of 10, definitely recommend. The next game I played is Paper Trail, which I finished on the 4th of November. It took me almost 11 hours to play, which involved getting most but not all of the collectibles. The game is $29.50 on Steam. This is another map-bending puzzle game, but this time, instead of rotating parts of the map is a piece of paper and you fold it like origami to connect paths that were otherwise separate. This game is a really good game for people who like I guess I'd describe it as customizable levels of difficulty. If you want a relatively chill experience, the game has inbuilt optional instructions for how to fold the paper progressively to get through each level, just like origami instructions, which you can follow to relatively easily get through the game. If you want a bigger challenge, you can choose to never open these hints, and you can get an achievement for completing the game without them. Or if you're sneaky, you'll just have a YouTube video open on the other tab and not use the hints, just the video. You can add another level of difficulty by committing yourself to collecting every secret and collectible. The game doesn't give you instructions on how to do this, and many of the collectibles are far harder to get to than the main path. The actual story of the game involves the main character Paige running away from home. She wants to attend university in a faraway city, but her parents, although supportive, instruct her to stay home for her own safety. She has to journey through several different lands and avoid dangers in order to get to the city and the university. Each location provides different gimmicks, for instance, moving platforms or power sources, and you learn more about the kooky characters in each location, along with their ways of life and their traditions. I personally liked the dialogue in this game, and I thought that the literal map-bending nature of the puzzles was super engaging and unique. It was even unique compared to other map-bending games like Carto. I also really liked the origami and paper arts concept of the game. The game has tons of origami-based puns, especially in the names of the achievements, and the collectibles you find are all related to origami. For instance, you can find different fish origami near water sources. The other cool thing about this game is how it's based around the idea of origami sheets having a different pattern on each face. Throughout the game, for every single piece of paper, you can right-click to reveal the other side of the paper, which reveals tons of beautiful designs and several secrets. The art of the game is brilliant, and the unique design of each location was lovely. I think the highlight of the game is the sound design. The sound design was super detailed, down to Paige's footsteps making different sounds on different surfaces. The best part was the paper folding sound effects, which were so realistic and satisfying that I kid you not, I sometimes just sat and stared at the screen, folding and unfolding paper with no purpose just to hear the sound effect more. The story is all about learning more secrets through folded paper, so you can, of course, dig deep into layers of it or just play the main story. Some of the problems are a bit weird and unintuitive, but overall this is a nice and chill game, and the paper is wonderful. I'll give it a 7 out of 10 only because it wasn't the most engaging game ever. The next game is Ye Guild Clerk, which I finished on the 2nd of December. The game is free on Steam and only takes about an hour to complete, although it does have different customization options and different endings, so you could probably get like 2 to 3 hours worth of playtime out of it. This is a pretty simple and easy game. You've been hired by a fantasy guild to be a clerk. You give people quests and the items they need for those quests, and then you give them the appropriate reward when they return. There are 5 in-game days in which to do this. This is basically your training period at the guild. You can customize your desk and you can treat each cast member in different ways. For instance, if you think someone went above and beyond in their duty, you can give them a greater reward, or if they were snarky, you can reduce their reward. The game tells you what to do, so the main decisions you're making are which of the 2 quests to give the characters. At the end of the game, you'll get a sheet telling you how each character felt about you and about their questing life. For instance, whether they died or survived, and so on. The game claims it has 40 different endings across all of the characters, which I haven't actually tested, but does add at least a bit of replayability value. This isn't an epic game or anything, it's too short to have any real storyline, if nothing else, and I do wish it was longer and had some kind of sandbox version, potentially with procedural generation, but it's literally free, so if you want a short and cozy game to play, go for it. I'll give it 6 out of 10 to put it with the other games that don't really have a story and are too short for much else. I think the game would be massively improved by having a few fun achievements. The next game I played is Roki, which I finished on the 4th of December. It took me about 10 hours to complete, and although I didn't finish all of the achievements, you could get all of the achievements in a 10-hour run. The game is usually $30 on Steam, but is often on sale, sometimes for as low as $3, so I'd definitely recommend picking it up at that price point. This game gave me deja vu, because this is the 3rd game I picked up in the same number of years about Nordic folklore in which a family lives in a forest, a child gets kidnapped by some kind of folklore creature for purposes of child sacrifice, and then you, the family member, journey through the forest, at which point you stumble into an abandoned village. The other 2 games are Bramble the Mountain King and Through the Woods. The abandoned villages in Through the Woods and Roki even almost look identical. I guess children being sacrificed to forest creatures really was just a massive concern in ancient and medieval Europe. Bramble and Through the Woods are both horror games, and I even quit Through the Woods because it wasn't my kind of horror game. So I'm sure you can imagine that when I stepped into that village in Roki and got flashbacks to Through the Woods, I was freaking out a bit. Thankfully, Roki is not a horror game. It's an atmospheric puzzle game about the nature of family in all of its different forms. The gameplay of Roki involves exploring the forest and meeting different fantastical creatures who help you on your journey, and a simple crafting system to help you solve problems. The gameplay is pretty linear and simple, and there aren't many difficult problems. There are a few janky control moments, but overall it ran pretty smoothly, and a bigger issue I had was the crafting system. You can only combine things in specified ways, so even if you had a good creative idea, you can't just use it. The other issue with the crafting system is that even items that shouldn't be single use are treated as single use, which is strange and annoying. The game progresses you through several areas, including a snowy mountain, an underground lake, and an abandoned castle. The soundtrack and ambience are brilliant. I especially like the music for the fungi-infected forest. The game also includes an interesting semi-co-op section, where, similarly to in Bokura, you play as 2 characters who are each in different worlds, and thus have access to different tools and methods of traversing the map. However, you don't play this with a friend, but by yourself, switching between the 2 characters, which is an interesting experience. There are some weird and unintuitive puzzles in this game, which I think mostly stems from the ultra-specific crafting system, but this is another game that I really enjoyed and would love to be able to experience again for the first time. It has a nice hopeful ending about confronting trauma and xenophobia, and of self-acceptance and family. So if you'd like to play an atmospheric puzzle game with those themes, I'd definitely recommend Roki. I'll give it a 9 out of 10. The next game I finished was Spiritfarer, which I finished on the 8th of December. The game has a free demo, but the full game costs $44. It's one of those games where you could just do the main storyline and spend like 10 hours on it, or you could complete the entire game and spend like 80 hours on it. This is a game by Thunder Lotus, who were the same developers who made Jotun, and although I enjoyed both games in concept, the actual gameplay of Spiritfarer is infinitely smoother and more enjoyable than in Jotun. I started playing this game in November 2024 and got really into it and played it almost daily for about a month. And then, I don't know what happened, but I never really played it again. I think I had the desire to 100% complete the game, which would involve completing every character quest and collecting all of the items in the game, including ingredients and meals. But my ideal game takes between 10 and 30 hours to complete, and once it starts inching past that 30-hour mark, I start to lose interest, which is exactly what happened with Spiritfarer. In the end, it took me 46.5 hours to complete, and although I did the majority of character quests and collections, I didn't finish all of them. I'll put a mini spoiler here, so close your ears for 15 seconds if you don't want to hear it. The only character whose quests I didn't fully complete and I didn't take to the Everdoor was Buck, which I did feel bad about, but at the same time I thought, well, if there's one spirit who should take over from me and become the Spiritfarer, it really should be Buck, shouldn't it? He seems perfect for the job. Okay, spoilers over. The whole point of Spiritfarer is that it's a very cathartic game about the process of death and the act of letting go after death, whether that be the death of a loved one or yourself. This is a game that I hear a lot of people play after someone they love died, and helps them achieve some sense of relief and acceptance. It showcases the 5 stages of grief and also the different ways in which people cope with their own life and death, as well as covering a wide range of reasons that people died, from terminal illnesses to addictions and accidents. So yes, I would say that this game definitely has many confronting elements, but that doesn't mean it's a dark game. It has a very hopeful and therapeutic tone about death, which is explored through the main characters, Stella and Daffodil, her cat. Stella and Daffodil arrive in the afterlife in a ferry owned by Charon, the figure who ferries the dead to the afterlife in Greek mythology. He's ready to retire, so he leaves his power to them, only the power gets split between them. You can choose to play Spiritfarer as a single player, or as a local co-op where one player controls Stella and one controls Daffodil, and each can complete different tasks. Once they've been made the next Spiritfarers, they have to find a boat and find some spirits to start ferrying through the afterlife to the Everdoor. But of course, we always get the consent of spirits to bring them to our ship and to the door, and we help them resolve their traumas on the way too. The bulk of the game is a kind of combination between a farming/crafting sim, an open world exploration game, and a fetch quest simulator, as you find spirits and complete quests for them while learning more about them. Each spirit has unique things they like, including having a favourite and least favourite food, and it's your job to keep them as happy and as comfortable as possible while learning more about Stella's own life. Each of the spirits will tell you about their life, death, anxieties, and traumas as you get to know them, before you drop them off at the Everdoor. There are tons of denizens of the afterlife, but there are 15, or kind of 16, unique spirits you can bring to your boat. Actually, now that I say it, I don't think I completed Daria's quests either. Anyway, the point is you don't have to complete all of the quests of all of these spirits to finish the game. I think you only need to complete about 4 or so spirits. But obviously most people choose to finish most of them because, as I did, most players feel bad if anyone's left behind. The large-scale nature of this game and the relaxing simulation elements of the gameplay mean that a lot of people find replayability value in the game, especially since the different combinations of spirits you can have on your boat at any given time can result in different Easter egg interactions. Even beyond the spirits on your boat, the world is very interesting, and is split into different regions which clearly have real-world inspirations. There's a Japanese-style region, a Nordic region, a Chinese city region, an English region, that kind of thing. And there's lots of fun interactions you can have with spirits in these places, where you can also do some side quests. I think this game is really good for anyone who thinks the gameplay sounds appealing, and who wants to play a game that provides some sense of acceptance, hope, and catharsis around death. That said, proceed with caution because it does have some pretty dark themes to do with death and the ways in which people live and die, so yeah, be warned. I'll give the game an 8 out of 10. My enjoyment was soured by my own ambition in trying to complete everything, which led to the game becoming too long for me to be interested in. And the game can get repetitive and grindy if you're trying to 100% complete it, so be warned about that too. The next game I played is Fall of Porcupine, which is a relatively linear narrative game. I finished this game in 18 hours, but only got 47% of the achievements because I played it very straight, with no side quests as such. There aren't actual quests in this game, but if you explore every nook and cranny of the world, you'll come across lots of fun side things you can do, like joining the theatre and helping a kid write a comic. If you're someone who likes exploring every detail off the beaten path in games and finding all of the Easter eggs, this is definitely a game for you. Fall of Porcupine has a free demo on Steam and is otherwise $29.50. It's a game dedicated to healthcare workers and about the good and bad of the field. As someone who works in healthcare, it's very accurate in my opinion. It includes a more detailed trigger warning at the start of the game since, well, being set in a hospital, it does deal with topics of disease, death, mental health, and so on. In Fall of Porcupine, you play as a pigeon called Finley, who has just joined the staff of St. Ursula's Hospital as a doctor. The hospital serves the town of Porcupine and presumably other nearby areas, and over the course of the seasons you meet the residents of the town, treat patients and get to know them, and uncover the darkness of the town and the medical industry, both in terms of the people who go into the industry with bad motivations, and in terms of the abuse that healthcare workers receive on a daily basis for just trying to do their jobs. Finley also has his own problems he's working through, and you can explore all of these things in more or less detail depending on how much time you intend to spend talking to the other characters. If you like bittersweet stories and games with layers of detail and lore, you'll probably like this game. I think this is also a good game to show people what it's like being a healthcare worker, so if you're interested in that, go for it. It also has that small town vibe with all of the things you'd expect to come with that, like a pub, town festivals and traditions, and shenanigans. I'll give this game a 7 out of 10. I think it has a few issues, like as far as I can tell, it only autosaved at the end of each day, and some days were quite long, which meant that I sometimes lost a lot of progress. This is one of the reasons I didn't explore everything there was to explore in the game. I was always worried that I would invest extra effort and then would lose it in the save. The second issue related to saves was that this game didn't seem to sync to the Steam cloud. Other games I've played like Spiritfarer sync to the Steam cloud, so if I downloaded the game onto my laptop, for instance, I could pick it up where I left it off on my desktop. But Fall of Porcupine doesn't seem to do this. I was house sitting for someone and downloaded it onto my laptop intending to continue the game, and when I pressed continue, it just kind of started me at the start of the game again, which was disappointing. I also got soft locked at some point when the game seemed to have glitched and wouldn't let me finish the task I was doing, but I couldn't move on without finishing it, and when I restarted the game, it dropped me right at the start of that day, so I lost like 40 minutes worth of progress. That made me very upset. So for those issues, I can't rate it higher. It also has a very abrupt ending, or maybe I just thought that was the case because I unknowingly finished a play session almost right at the end of the game, and then it only took me like 10 minutes to finish the game on the next play session, which was underwhelming. That said, I think the game has a good tone and atmosphere and a good sense of building tension. The next game I played is Neva. This game is by Nomada Studio, who are also known for Gris, which I played in 2024. I don't tend to cry when playing games, watching films, reading books and so on, but Gris and Neva are the only two video games that have ever made me cry. Except that as I write this script, I played another game in 2026 that has made me cry, so you'll have to wait for this year's review for that. Anyway, it took me almost 13 hours to finish this game, and it costs $30 on Steam. The concept of Neva is that it's an atmospheric platformer where you play as a swordswoman, raising a magical wolf pup over 4 metaphorical and literal seasons. With each season, the wolf grows, going through the various stages of life, from being a vulnerable pup to a boisterous teenager to a powerful ally. The wolf, Neva, is basically the bastion of light against the darkness, which grows in the form of creatures like they're made of dark goo, which infect the creatures of the world and turn them into body horror zombies. Nomada Studios seem to make games with the goal of providing emotional and atmospheric experiences based in important real-world topics. Gris was all about the 5 stages of grief and the loss of a mother figure, and Neva sends a clear environmentalist message, showing the negative effects of pollution and human impacts on the environment. The body horror of the game shows this in a visceral and disturbing way, and I think it's interesting to see how, in hindsight, After Us and Neva explore the same message in ways that are both similar and different. I just hate watching innocent animal body horror for no reason, but I think that's a pretty normal human reaction. I'm just a sensitive person. Anyway, Neva and Grease are pretty similar in art style, and gameplay loop. Both are relatively simple platformers with some puzzles to solve, but are more focused on the atmosphere and the journey rather than any actual difficult puzzles. Both involve the journey through a series of sections representing the different phases of growth in the game, and both have semi-cyclical storylines. They also have similar sets of achievements, mostly achievements for finishing each stage and for collecting all of the collectibles. In Gris, they're balls of light, and in Neva, they're glowing flowers. Neva differentiates itself from Gris as it has a combat system and several boss fights, but although I would say the combat requires basic baseline knowledge of platformers to not get stuck on, it isn't particularly hard. You also interact with Neva, whereas in Gris you journey alone. Anyway, I think I'll give it a 9 out of 10. It's very good at what it sets out to do, and obviously I cried. But also, I cried and was depressed, so no 10 out of 10 for you, Neva. The next game I played was Little Misfortune, which is an interactive graphic novel. It took me about 3 hours to complete and has a free demo on Steam, but otherwise costs $29. The game is labelled as psychological horror on Steam, which, I mean, I guess? It definitely had disturbing content, but I don't think I, had to mull it over and then had nightmares about it afterwards or anything like that. Maybe it's because it also has a lot of humour as well, some of which is unfortunately toilet humour, but, well, the main character is a child. The main character is Misfortune, an 8-year-old with a very active imagination. She can hear the narrator of the game, Mr. Voice, who leads her on a quest to find the eternal happiness which she wants to give to her mother. The game's page lists several features, including missing children, committing party crime, patting animals, including a kraken, and falling in love, which, to be fair to it, are all parts of the game. The game is very fun and engaging and includes layers of detail and story. I suppose, since the more you think about it, the more disturbing it gets, it does fall under psychological horror in the end. The most horrifying aspect of the game is the fact that all of the events of it are being experienced by an 8-year-old, who has basically become jaded even at such a young age and has started emulating the bad role models around her. There's also a vague implication of something dystopian about this world, as there are many ads for those classic dystopian happy masks around, and everyone you encounter has one. The game includes a strong mystery element too. There's a stalker fox called Benjamin who's been following Misfortune and sending her cryptic messages for some reason, and there have been a series of child disappearances in the town. So if all of that sounds good to you and you like single-sitting games, I'd recommend this game. It has multiple different choices you can make, so you'd be able to get several plays out of it, if that makes you feel better about the price tag. It also has a poignant ending, and there are a few side tangents you can go on for achievements. There are only 2 main downsides to this game, I think. First, obviously, it would be nice if it was longer, but that's a common complaint for anything good. Second, probably more importantly, a lot of people who've played this game complain about the choice system. Mr. Voice claims that your choices as the player really matter, but anyone who's played Choices Matter games can guess what I'm about to say. That being, well, they don't really matter, and the ending is basically the same regardless of your choices. This isn't just a simple criticism about false advertising though. So, first of all, almost every choice in the game doesn't affect the ending, to be fair, but most of the choices you can make lead to small changes in the game. Like, there are some encounters which lead to achievements which are locked behind certain choices much earlier in the game. Hence why I finished the game and found all of the collectibles and still only have 60% of the achievements. Second, there is one very important decision you can make which does change the ending, leading to basically a good ending or a bad ending. Which decision is the single important one? Haha, you get to guess. The other important thing to say about the choices complained about this game is, well, is it really false advertising? The game doesn't advertise itself as being a choices matter game, and only has that tag given by fans on Steam, some of whom may be trying to fool others. The game postures as a choices matter game when you actually get in-game, but this is just part of a wider storyline. Alright, spoilers coming. Skip forward like 45 seconds if you don't want to hear it. Have you skipped? Alright, spoilers coming now. Mr. Voice is the one who tells you that your choices matter, but Mr. Voice is lying to you the whole time. Thus, the implication is that he was also lying to you about the need to make good choices, because Misfortune is going to die anyway, and he tells you this at the start of the game. So some people think that he was being truthful about the choices being important since there is one important choice, while others think that he was lying since he was lying about everything else anyway. Is this a very thematically considered choice which also pokes fun at choices matter games which lie to you? Or is it just sloppy development like every other game of this kind? So that's up to you to decide, and spoilers are over now. Anyway, like I said, I found this game very enjoyable and thought-provoking. It's a very well-made product. It's fully voice-acted and is full of environments and script moments which are clearly massive labours of love. I love the sense of tension the game creates. If you've read The Book Thief, you know what kind of tension I'm talking about. It's also interesting to see the different interactions your choices could lead to, regardless of whether they actually change the ending or not. The dynamics between Misfortune and Mr. Voice are also brilliant. I'll give this game a 9 out of 10 because I think it's a wonderful and cohesive product which explores some interesting and meaningful themes, such as grief, happiness, and child abuse in a unique way. But I think it would have been nice for it to have been longer. Like, it was actually the perfect length for what it was, and making it longer wouldn't have made sense, but I want more! Also, it wasn't life-changing enough for a 10 out of 10. Sorry. The last game I played this year was the Dark Queen of Mortholme, which is a short game, i.e. it took me 25 minutes to complete, about if you were the final boss of a Souls-like video game with an evil king or queen. The game is $7.50 on Steam and is relatively straightforward. Basically, you're the Dark Queen of Mortholme, and a hero arrives who you punt like it's nothing. But the hero keeps getting reborn, and the two of you keep fighting, and you both inevitably change over time. You both learn new attacks and start to develop a snarky relationship, each asking the other to give up. The game page claims that your dialogue choices lead to multiple endings, which does seem true to at least some extent. The game has 3 endings, but they're linked to your actions, not to your dialogue choices, and 99% of people will only receive the main ending. Anyway, I thought the game was a great product. It's short, but it's unique and cohesive, and explores the Souls-like genre from a different perspective, and explores the theme of growth in a unique way. It's also gorgeous. Like, I love how the light from the windows is reflected in the floor. You also get access to some of the concept art which you can view from the main menu, which I also thought was nice. 9 out of 10, great product. I want much more of it though. Give me a series of games about being the Dark Queen and encountering this tenacious hero. And please, more of the lesbian vibes implied by the game. That's taking forbidden romance to the next level. Okay, so the Dark Queen of Mortholme was the last game I played in 2025, but I do have 3 more games to discuss. These three are games that I would have finished and do believe that I have the skill to finish, but was held back by something outside of my control, which meant that I couldn't actually finish the game. I want to discuss them here because it'll probably be a long time if I ever decide to try finishing them again, and because I as good as finished these games but was held back by external circumstances. So, I think I can give a pretty accurate judgment or review on these games anyway. The first game is Jotun, which I mentioned in parts 5 and 18. I would have finished it earlier in the year, but decided to give it a break after encountering issues with the final boss battle, and then when I came back on March 15th, tried many other times and then decided to call it quits. But I'll get there in a moment. Let's talk about the actual game first. It's developed by Thunder Lotus, who are the same developers who made Spiritfarer. The game costs $22 and took me about 10.5 hours to complete. The story of Jotun is that you, Thora, are a Viking warrior who died by drowning, not in battle, thus you don't get to go to Valhalla. To prove your worthiness, you need to battle the Jotun, who are like giants/gods/something like that. The gameplay itself is an action isometric game which alternates between making you solve a series of puzzles and large-scale boss battles. The game also includes upgrades, both abilities and health increases, that you can gain for Thora, and challenges, for instance, to beat bosses in a certain time frame or without using abilities. The game takes you through several elemental biomes with different puzzles, and completing the puzzles frees each Jotun, who is obviously a boss battle. I really enjoyed the base game and the process of solving the puzzles. The art is lovely, there are some interesting puzzles, and the boss battles all feel unique and interesting, and of course, difficult. There are also some great moments of tension, and the ending is nice and satisfying. The issue I have with this game is the controls. Spiritfarer, the other Thunder Lotus game I've played, has very fluid movement, as does Death's Door, the other isometric combat game I played around March to May. But perhaps because it was released in 2015, Jotun has a movement system which feels terrible. You can get used to it by playing the game, but once I played Death's Door and came back to this one, it became glaringly obvious how terrible the movement in this game is. It's clunky and unresponsive and just makes you feel infinitely worse at the game than you actually are. I could ignore this for most of the game, but not for the final boss battle. This battle, which I won't spoil the plot details of, is totally possible with this clunky movement system. It's not like it's an insanely difficult boss battle, but it is impossible to complete without being able to use your axe to destroy homing missiles, basically. Only my axe never did. This isn't a matter of weird tiny hitboxes, that would be annoying but workable. No, at least as far as I could tell, my axe was just not doing its job. I could swing with one timing and one position one time and destroy an arrow, and do the exact same thing the following time and not destroy it. Looking at other people playing the game, it's clearly neither that difficult nor intended to be that difficult, so I don't know what I was doing wrong. I'm well versed in the art of destroying projectiles in boss battles, know that I have the skill to beat this boss, and have beaten similar bosses in similar games, so I don't know what was happening. Anyway, let's just say that the feeling that the game isn't responding to my actions and thus losing even when I have the skill to win isn't a feeling that you want to evoke in any gamer, and seems to be a feeling that Jotun has evoked in a lot of people. I'm glad it's not just a me problem. So I decided to let it rest, since I'm clearly capable of beating the game based on both other games I've played and my completion of Jotun to the final battle. I even followed tutorials to beat the final boss, and it didn't work. Bizarre. Anyway, without the issue with the final boss, I'd give this game a 7 out of 10. The movement is hard to get around, but the rest of the game is great, and I think it's an appropriate length. I love the design of the bosses and the concept of the game too. This is an interesting one. I have 78 hours logged on this game, but I couldn't tell you how many it took me to complete it because, well, I first played this game in 2019. This was the first game that I bought on Steam. I watched the anime when it came out and was fascinated by the idea of the seraphim. Actually, even before I watched the anime, This single shot from the intro of the game of Mikleo phasing through Soray's back made me go, oh hell yeah, this is cool. And to this day, the concept of the seraphim in this universe and how they reside in their hosts' bodies and the magic system is what keeps me loving this world. So when I'd saved up the money, I bought it and started playing it on January 5th, 2019, apparently. I got maybe a third of the way through the game before I came to a boss battle that I was unable to flee from, and which I didn't have the skills or game knowledge to beat at the time. I then tried playing the game again in 2020 but got stuck at the same spot. So, in 2025, having played many more video games, it was time to start again. One of my first true video game loves, Tales of Zestiria. Looking back at the knowledge I have now, Tales of Zestiria isn't really the kind of game for me. Although I love the concept of JRPGs, I don't think they're my type of game. They reward you for having intricate knowledge of the combat system and complex upgrade systems. They include infinite side quests which result in hundreds of hours of potential playtime, and they reward and often require farming, none of which are things I'm interested in. You know, I want a medium-length story-based game with combat I win through skill, not upgrades. This is why I stopped playing Warframe 2, by the way. The combat and the farming was so annoying. But I do love the story and world of Zestiria, as I do with Warframe, so I wanted to give it one more shot. And give it one more shot I did. With my more developed video game knowledge, I was able to easily beat the boss I was stuck on previously, and gained a far greater knowledge of the game's systems, which let me beat even harder bosses even when I was underleveled. Knowing that I'd get sick of the game if I spent the time to track down every side quest, I stuck to the main story, got right to the final boss battle, knew what I had to do to beat the boss because of the anime, and it didn't work. Yeah, so I don't really consider this spoilers. The final boss has a system where once you've done a portion of its health, it winds up for a huge attack. During this time, if you deal enough damage, a prompt will appear getting you to do something that is definitely a spoiler. Otherwise, the boss one-shots your entire party regardless of your loadout. You do this 4 times, and after the 4th time, you win. Yay! Except the prompt literally never appeared for me. Yeah, I kid you not. No matter what I did and how much damage I dealt, even after farming a bunch, changing my loadouts, and reducing the difficulty so the boss had a lower damage requirement, the prompt still didn't appear for me. And if the prompt doesn't appear, you can't complete the action, so you literally get one shot guaranteed. There's no way to dodge the one shot. I know that my squad were doing enough damage to the boss, and I know that I have the skill to beat it, because I could keep my party alive throughout the boss's regular attacks while doing enough damage to get to that checkpoint. But the game physically wouldn't let me kill the boss. I watched countless tutorials and know I'm doing everything right, but well, nothing changed. Similarly to Jotun, since I know that I can beat the boss itself and am being let down by a game system, I basically consider myself to have finished this game. I know the ending anyway, so thankfully I don't feel like I'm missing out on that much. In the future, I think I'll go back and run through the whole game, including all of the side quests, but for now, that thought is a bit overwhelming. Anyway, the game is usually $70 on Steam, but when I wrote this script, it was on sale for $7 until the 10th of Feb, so obviously that's way past. So if you like JRPGs, go for it, if it's on sale for a good price. It's part of the mega successful and popular Tales series, but I don't know much about the other games outside of the fact that apparently lots of them are really grindy and none of them have the same magic system, so what's even the point? Considering I like the magic system. Okay, so what about the actual game? The Tales of series is a series of JRPGs, and each installment is set in a different universe with different characters and stories, but similar mechanics. I don't know anything about the other games, like I said, so I hope I don't get anything wrong here. But Zestiria was released in 2015 and follows a similar high fantasy concept to the other installments. It's basically a Jesus allegory where a young man called Soray has to become the shepherd, and in doing so he works with the seraphim, or elemental spirits who only he and his most powerful followers can see, to push back the darkness or hellions, literally demons, from the world. Hence we get lots of typical religious stuff. he performs miracles, there's cults and false prophets, not everyone believes he is who he is, and so on. This description makes the game sound a lot more obnoxious than it actually is. I think the game and the world building make up for the more on-the-nose aspects of the story. Like I said, there are elemental seraphim who serve each shepherd, and in doing so they lend him some of their elemental power and become bonded to him, residing inside his body, hence the cool shot of Mikleo coming out of his back in the opening. There are also weapons specific to each element. A bow for water, a sword for fire, which by the way he literally pulls out of a stone to become the shepherd, ahem, and then like 2 giant stone boxing glove things for earth and flying blades for wind. Tales of Zestiria has some great open world moments, and some of the environments are absolutely gorgeous. I personally am a massive fan of Lady Lake. There are also tons of fun character moments and NPC interactions as expected of a JRPG. As is also typical of JRPGs, there's several complex leveling and equipment systems, and a decent chunk of farming is required if you want to maintain a viable level 4 bosses, especially if you're playing on a harder difficulty. Also, the menus are beautifully designed, but sometimes confusing. Mind you, that's probably down to the insane number of enchantment systems and other things running around. I got a bunch of achievements accidentally just by playing with random buttons. I haven't played any other JRPGs, but it sounds like Tales of Zestiria is a pretty typical one, so if you like the genre, you'll probably like it. Mind you, apparently a lot of Tales fans really hate it and think it's the worst entry in the franchise. I don't know why, but you've been warned. Outside of the fact that I don't think JRPGs are the genre for me, I really enjoyed it. All things considered. Maybe I was just too invested in the world building and the power system, as opposed to the gameplay. Speaking of, maybe I'll sound naive when I say this, but I thought the game actually had really good skill expressiveness. If you're like me and don't want to spend a billion hours farming, you can still beat every single boss in the game through resourcefulness. I don't find optimizing loadouts an enjoyable part of gaming, another reason why I quit, like I said, Warframe and also Hearthstone, and a fact that you could possibly tell from my Rakan minisode. So I went into every single boss battle under-leveled and with sub-optimal loadouts. But by using the game's system of armatization, where you basically fuse Sorey and a Seraphim together to create a stronger unit and then can unfuse them, I guess, you can keep your party alive longer and beat higher level bosses. I found that system very rewarding and satisfying, even if it did mean that I was sometimes in insanely long boss battles. As far as the actual gameplay and story loop itself, I thought the story made sense and has nice rising tension. It also explored the concept of religious corruption and the interesting political relationships between different realms, which were complicated by the demons whispering in people's ears and making them paranoid. Sorey's growth and arc generally felt believable, and I think the ending is nice and cathartic. The side quests, or at least the ones I looked at, are also interesting and make the world feel larger, as they should. The only main issue I have with the plot and run of the game, which is an issue that almost every other single player seems to have as well, is that there's this part in the game. Oh gee. Basically, as you go through the game, you have the option to defeat mini-bosses to collect these, like, memory crystal kinds of things, which will give you information about the life of the mysterious previous shepherd. But, like, these are side quests, so while many people, including myself, collect a few kind of naturally, we don't go out of our way to collect all of them, until the game, halfway through, suddenly tells you it's mandatory to collect all of them to progress the story, and you have to backtrack to get all of the ones you haven't already collected. And to make matters worse, the game doesn't tell you which ones you're missing or where to collect them. You're expected to just run around the entire world looking in every corner for these crystals. I looked online and found a Reddit post detailing where you can find most of them, but even then I couldn't remember or see which ones I had and hadn't collected, and the post was missing some of them. This almost made me quit, but I was determined to finish the game this time around. But it's still insane that you're given optional side quests before being told that, hey, JK, it's mandatory. Baffling decision. So with all of that said, I'd recommend the game, but only if you're prepared for all of that. It seems like a relatively beginner-friendly JRPG, but by that I mean beginner to JRPGs, not beginner to gaming. I think it's essential that you have at least a decent amount of gaming experience before starting this game, because otherwise you'll just get completely lost. And I'll give the game a 7 out of 10 because of the final boss issue and the crystal collecting issue. The last game on this list is Black Skylands, which I attempted to finish on May 11th. The game took me about 20 hours to complete and costs $29.50 on Steam. This is a top-down RPG shooter which includes extensive base and loadout optimization and lots of side quests. Yeah, I don't know why I picked up this game considering I know I don't like extensive side quests and optimization, but since I'd bought it, I was going to finish it. And I did. As with Tales of Zestiria being underleveled and underdamaged, until I got to the final boss. There's a moment just before the final boss battle where the game tells you that you'll be locked into the game from that point onwards, and thus won't be able to go back and complete any side quests, level up gear, or whatever else. And I was like, okay, yeah, cool, like, I want to finish the game. But what I didn't realise is that this portion of the game will let you into the final boss battle, regardless of whether you have the stats to finish it or not. The boss battle has a swarm effect, and with correctly leveled guns you'd be able to clear the swarm and continue moving, but with my guns I physically couldn't, and would literally get stuck in the middle of a swarm which was so crowded that I couldn't even move to dodge the actual boss's attacks. I suppose this theoretically could be possible for someone with much better gaming skills than I have to beat, but it would be a stretch, even for the most skilled of players. And of course, I was locked into this section, so my only option to beat the final boss would be to go back and play the entire game again, even though it was a game that I didn't particularly like and had struggled to keep the motivation to keep playing to begin with. Yeah, not a brilliant situation to be in, so I just didn't finish it. Basically, I think that if you don't have the firepower to complete the game shouldn't just let you lock yourself into an impossible battle which makes you restart everything from scratch. Insane. And worse than Zestiria, I think. Even if damage had been the issue in Zestiria, I could have just gone back to an earlier save and farmed more, but I couldn't do that with this game. Anyway, assuming that you enjoy side quests and optimizing your loadouts, and that you enjoy top-down shooters, how was this game? This game is definitely one I'd recommend if you like tower defense kinds of games. The game is set in a sci-fi world where everyone lives on skylands, or floating islands, and you frequently have to defend either an island or your ship from outside threats, both human and alien. This involves upgrading and maximizing your defense and offense, and of course, some strategic maneuvering in the air. I personally thought the movement system of your ship was unintuitive and clunky, but I think if you enjoy the tower defense stuff I was talking about earlier, you'd probably enjoy this even with the clunky movement. The on-ground battles are much better, if nothing else because the main character has a grapple hook and can pull herself around. The game also has an ammo system and several weapons you can carry at once, so if you like that kind of thing, you'll probably like this game. There's also layers you can learn about the world, as expected of a game which basically has the same appeal as an RPG with side quests and a wide open world. The game also has an interesting and poignant story about the nature of family and humanity, although I would say it's a pretty cliche and predictable story. I guess it's cliche for a reason though. So if you like all of that, I'd recommend it. Just make sure you're really powerful before you lock yourself into the final boss. I'll give this game a 5 out of 10 purely for personal enjoyment reasons. This was not the game for me, and I impulsively bought it because it had an interesting concept and was on sale. But this is one of the several games I've played over the past years which have made me realise that just because it's on my wish list, a very liberally applied tag on my Steam account, doesn't necessarily mean I'll like it, and I should recheck the game page and tags before buying. I would have saved a lot of money if I'd started doing that in 2024. Ah, well, I've learned my lesson. So with that said, I've discussed all of the games I've finished, or done my absolute best to finish this year. Let's talk about some stats, my rankings, and my personal best and worst games. Okay, so this year I finished 22 games, and there were 3 more that I thought I as good as finished and was held back, not by my own skill, but by the game itself. So 25 games total. Now, I've given a lot of games the same ratings as each other, so now it's time to consider which games in which tiers I liked more than the others. Starting from the top, I have 2 games I gave a 10 out of 10, After Us and The Last Campfire. I think I liked After Us more, so I'll put that first, and The Last Campfire is a very close second. Then, as far as 9 out of 10 games, I have 6. The League character Rakan, Venba, Neva, Little Misfortune, Roki, and the Dark Queen of Mortholme. I think I'll put Little Misfortune first, followed by Roki, then Neva, then Venba, then the Dark Queen of Mortholme, and then Rakan, since he's only an honourable mention anyway. I had 6 8 out of 10 games. Death's Door, Bokura, Haven, Carto, The Rewinder, and Spiritfarer. I think I'll put them in the following order, although they're all so close together that this took a lot of consideration. Haven, Bokura, Death's Door, Carto, The Rewinder, and Spiritfarer. Then there were 6 7 out of 10 games. Minami Lane, Hoa, Fall of Porcupine, Paper Trail, Jotun, and Tales of Zestiria. I think I'd put them in the following order. Tales of Zestiria, probably being boosted by a nostalgia factor, considering I forgot I only gave it a 7 out of 10 and was surprised it was so low. Fall of Porcupine, Paper Trail, Minami Lane, Hoa, and Jotun. There were 4 6 out of 10 games: Gorogoa, From Eva with Green, Gathering Sky, and Ye Guild Clerk. I think I'd rank them Ye Guild Clerk, Gorogoa, From Eva with Green, then Gathering Sky. And then there's Black Skylands, which was the lowest game on my list, which I gave a 5 out of 10. For the sake of completeness, the list in order is After Us, The Last Campfire, Little Misfortune, Roki, Neva, Venba, The Dark Queen of Mortholme, Rakan, Haven, Bokura, Death's Door, Carto, The Rewinder, Spiritfarer, Tales of Zestiria, Fall of Porcupine, Paper Trail, Minami Lane, Hoa, Jotun, Ye Guild Clerk, Gorogoa, From Eva with Green, Gathering Sky, and Black Skylands. So my average rating was 7.72 and the median was 8 out of 10, both of which sound about right. There are 3 modes. I gave 6 games each a 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, and 9 out of 10 rating. I think this reflects my tendency to rate games as I rate books, generally high, or on the higher end of average, unless they do something horrid to offend me or something. While I'll open almost any book and give it a go, resulting in a lot of average ratings, I, at least over the course of the past few years, have made a more concerted effort to only buy games that I genuinely think I'll enjoy, resulting in a higher average rating. This probably has something to do with the fact that the majority of the books I read I get either for free from street libraries or for mega cheap from op shops, while I pay for almost every game that I play and sometimes pay more than the price of a new book, so I have more motivation to get my money's worth. In 2024, for instance, I saw that Through the Woods was on discount, and I bought it thinking it was a game I was interested in, but I thought it was a different game, and it actually isn't the style of game I'd like at all, so that was wasted money. And there were unfortunately a few games like that, like Black Skylands. Oh well, it is what it is. Like I said, on the bright side, I've become a lot better over 2025. As far as my busiest and quietest months, I had a few months in which I didn't finish any games. January when I was travelling, and in June and August where I was in busy periods of uni. June is an exam period and August is the start of second semester when I'm busy teaching people how to stab and slice their friends. My busiest month was unsurprisingly December, when I didn't have much going on up until the 20th. I finished 7 games in December, although that was probably because it was the end of the year and I felt the need to wrap things up more and reduce my to-be-played list. For instance, I was determined to finish Spiritfarer this year, so I just did in December. Ye Guild Clerk and the Dark Queen of Mortholme were 2 other games that fell under that category. They were games that I knew that I could knock off my to-be-played in a single session, but I still technically finished 5 longer, or full-length, for me, games in December, which was more than any other month, even accounting for the end-of-year rush. So with all of that said, what are my top recommendations and honourable mentions versus... I mean, I didn't dislike any of the games I played this year, but dishonourable mentions, I guess? Well, After Us and The Last Campfire are clearly my top two recommendations, and although I have a lot of 7 to 9 out of 10 games, I'll just give a few honourable mentions, which are Little Misfortune, Roki, Neva, Haven, Carto, and Fall of Porcupine. I think these are the games that I most enjoyed this year, although, of course, Tales of Zestiria will always have a special place in my heart. Like Skylands was obviously the game I'd least recommend this year, although I do have my reservations about Jotun considering how clunky the controls were. So, I don't have anything else to say about that. I can't tell you how much money I spent on games because I bought almost all of these on sale, and thus don't know, and I can't really tell you how long I played video games this year for, because, well, if nothing else, I have no clue how many hours I spent playing League this year. Time wasted on LoL doesn't even work for my account, and I seriously doubt that's because of the quantity played. So with that said, there's nothing else to do except wrap up this video. I played 22, or 25 if you agree with me about the last 3, video games this year, which is more than I've played in every other year of my life put together. Sure, a lot of them were small games which took only about an hour or less to complete, but I still think I've played more long games than I have in the rest of my life. The good news is that I enjoyed almost all of the games that I played, and even the ones that I didn't enjoy as much I could recognise had an audience that would suit them. I'm pretty satisfied with the lineup of games I played this year, and I found many more that I would recommend to others. The interesting, or I guess good thing about my gaming habits is, whether because they're shorter games or less grindy games, or because of the genre, or the Steam algorithm is weird for my account, or what, most of the games that I play are ones that have very small or even non-existent followings online. Searching for Let's Plays frequently comes up with only one series, if that, and although I add almost every game I play to the categories I follow on Twitch, I rarely see people play them. Maybe cozy gamers are just predisposed to not stream on Twitch? Now that would be an interesting personality psychology question. It's probably a real thing. People who play cozy games are probably more introverted and probably therefore less likely to stream. Anyway, TLDW, I am satisfied, and if you liked the sound of any of these games, add them to your wishlist or even buy them full price if you want. Many of these games are from indie developers or small companies, making them great choices to support. And if you were one of the 6 people who wanted this video, I hope you especially enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, I hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next video.